This video will be about the assembly evaluation application, which is used to create simulations of the assembly, and in this case I'll be showing you how to do it on the NovaPen from our project. The first thing you want to do is press the plus, add new content, and go down to Simulation Meter Modeler and choose Manufacturing Simulation. This creates a simulation state which we can use to create our simulation in. So once this is done, you can see that it's put inside a manufacturing simulation, and what we want to do now is we want to take the motor module, so the dial, the push button, and the housing, and we want to move it up so it all gets assembled together before getting attached to the cartridge holder. Maybe make more sense later. So the first thing we want to do is to create tracks for this. The track is pretty much some axis which the parts will move on or rotate around, this is how the simulation is created. And to do this, you choose the housing. Let's choose the housing first. We'll make a new track, and then you have the different coordinates, x, y, z coordinates, and these can be pulled in whatever direction you need this part to move in the simulation, or you can rotate it around the axis of the x, y, z. Yes. So we want to move the housing up by, let's say, 45 millimeters, and then we want to press the record button because this will save this track, and we press OK. As you can see, the track has been created, which is this blue line, and this will do also for the dial. This happens sometimes, I don't know why, but the track, dial, track, and then we move this up by 45 millimeters. Press the record button and OK, and then we'll do the same thing for the push button. Track, move it up by 45 millimeters. Record and OK. So now that we've done this, we also want to move the start of the track up, because this will make it so all this will stay in one spot or before being moved down onto the cartridge holder. It'll probably make more sense later. So we go like this to change starting point, and then we get the same had before, and we will just pull up 45 millimeters. Okay, and you just press anywhere on the screen, and then we do this for the push button also. Push up by 45 millimeters. Okay, and we'll do the same for the dial. Up by 45 millimeters. Okay, perfect. So now we have the motor module assembly where we want it to be before it gets moved down onto the cartridge module. So the cartridge module is the motor module, is assembled by first attaching the push button, the dial, and then the push button after. So in order to move the dial up a bit so it can be simulated to be attached to the housing, we want to modify it, and we do this by right clicking on dial, choosing track 2 dial 1 object definition. Then we get this through and we go up to, say, 40 millimeters. Then we don't record, but we press modify. Okay. And now we want to to move the push button up, so when it's attached it gets moved down. Oh yeah, and all the tracks and stuff will go into this excitations folder. So here we go, push button, on push object, definition. I move it up, let's say also 40 millimeters. 40 millimeters. We modify it, we press OK. Now we can check if it's done correctly. So here we press the play button and see it goes in. So perfect. And then we do the same thing for the push button and it goes in. Perfect. And now that we've done this, we want to move the whole motor module down onto the cartridge folder. And this is done by creating tracks that move all the dial, housing, and push button down by 45 millimeters. So new track, housing, 45 millimeters down, press record, OK, and this comes down here. Let's call it something else. So go to properties, for housing, let's call it down. Do the same for the push button, track, second, push button, go track, down, 45 millimeters. Port, OK, and the dial. Do the same for. Down 45 millimeters. Port, OK, and let's just change the names for these also. So properties, call this down also, down, OK, style properties, and down. OK, perfect. So something you can use is an assembly sequence, which is this new assembly sequence. And what this allows, what this does is it pretty much organizes all the tracks and makes it so you can change the time and choose what tracks come before other tracks and which tracks should be in parallel and stuff like this. So if we, for example, let's add the what we did in the beginning. So add existing, choose the housing, add existing, the dial, add existing, push button. So since the housing doesn't really move, it's just we just create the track so it's moved away from the rest of the pen, so the motor module could be assembled before being moved down. We make it parallel with the dial, and then we make sure that the push button comes after. So if we play this assembly sequence, we can see that the dial comes down first and then the push button comes down. Perfect. And now we can also add the rest, so the whole assembly gets attached to the cartridge holder. So go to assembly sequence, we add existing property, housing down, existing property, push button down, and dial down. And all these should be in parallel, as they should all move at the same time. So now we've done this, we can play it again, see if it's correct. So all of it gets moved down. The next step is to rotate this whole motor module so it attaches properly to the cartridge holder, as this is what it's done in the APS that Novo Nordisk gave us. So it's also done by creating a new track. Let's take the housing, new track, and then we rotate it around the x-axis, say negative 25 degrees. Record, press OK. Do the same thing to the dial, new track, around the x-axis with 25 degrees, negative 25 degrees. Record, OK. The push button is going to be a bit more difficult, as it turns around its own x-axis. You'll see. So on your track, turn it. As you can see, it turns around its own x-axis. So we have to do a bit more work on this one. This way, pull a bit up. This way. Of course, you can spend a lot of time making it perfect, but for now, this should be good for now. Record and press OK. Let's just call these something else. Properties. Let's call it rotate. Okay. Properties. Rotate. Okay. And same thing for this one. And let's add them to the assembly sequence. It's down here. Dial down. Existing housing rotate. Add existing rotate. Oh, let me just change the name after. Add existing push button rotate. Just change the name to die rotate, just so we don't get too confused. Perfect. Let's play it, see if it works. This goes in, in. Oh yes, we forgot to put them all in parallel so they all rotate at the same time. So let's do that. Like this. Okay, now it should look better. Nope. Yes. Perfect. And now the next step is to make the cap assembly for the cap module. So this is done in the same way. So we want to move this track. Oh, 1 second. Let's go up here instead. Choose the cap. Choose a new track. Move it up. Let's say 80 millimeters. Should be fine. Port. It's okay. And we want to move this up by 80 millimeters also. Choose top cap. Track 80. Port. Okay. And then we want to create. Want to modify this track. No, wait. Let's first. First, we want to change the. Just start the track to 80 millimeters. Oop. Fuck. So the next step we want to do is to create the cap module assembly. So it's pretty much the same thing. Track, move it up. Wait, let's just go in here instead. Cap, new track. Let's move it up by 80 millimeters. Port. Okay. Start the track to 80 also. Okay, and then we'll take the top cap and move it up to 80 millimeters. Port, yes, and then move this up 80 millimeters also. Then we want this to be further up, so it can be moved down onto the cap. So we go to top cap, object, definition. We want to modify it. Let's make it go up to, what should we say, 30 millimeters? Or 35. 5. Modify. Okay. So now we use the track for it to move down onto the cap. And then we want this whole thing to move down onto the cartridge folder. But let's first see if this works. Yes, perfect. So then we take this, so the cap, get a new track, move it down 80 millimeters, as that's what we changed it to, moved it up by 80, press the record button, OK, and do the same for the top cap. So track 80, record, and let's just call this something else. Call it, say, cap 1 down, OK, and top cap also, let's call it down. Go into the assembly sequence, down here, then we add them, so we add the cap and the top cap, properties, oh, nope, sorry, add existing activity, cap, existing activity, top cap, these should be parallel, existing activity, cap down, and existing top cap down, and these should also be in parallel. If you want, you could make, for example, these into an assembly sequence, these into assembly sequence, these into assembly sequence to maybe keep it more organized, or for some other reasons. But for now, we'll just put everything into one assembly sequence. And if you want to change the time, anyone, you just double click on this, and then you change the time. Anyways, let's see how it looks like now. So this is, it rotates, assemble, and then it gets assembled onto the cartridge holder. Perfect. And if it is wanted, we can create a new text action. If you want to portray any information to the user, any text information, it's done by pressing new text action. Let's do an example of the dial getting attached to the housing. So let's do mount dial. This is the name, and then this is how long you want the text message to be shown for. And then we can mount dial. This is what it would be called inside the here. And we want to add max force. This is pretty much what it's going to say in the text box. And target force 26. Do a preview. And then we can pretty much move it where you want it to be. So let's put it here. And you can of course change the font and the size and everything. And we press OK. Then it also gets added to this excitations folder. We go into assembly sequence, and let's put it here next to the dial, exit activity, mount dial, and we will put it in parallel with the dial. So it will show this message while the dial is moving into the housing. So let's see here. Let's press play, and as you can see, let's go a bit back. You see that the text shows up when the dial is being moved into the housing, attached to the housing. This concludes the video on the simulation and how to create a simulation in the assembly evaluation application.